Welcome everyone to this very special luncheon featuring Ernest Moniz, the United States Secretary of Energy. Please enjoy your food as it is about to be served. We're going to begin the formal program during dessert. Following the Secretary's keynote remarks, we will then engage in a moderated Q&A session. I've got a few questions I want to ask, and if we have any time remaining, we're going to turn to you. So what I would ask is, as you're eating and conversing, think a little bit about something you'd like to ask the Secretary, and maybe we'll be able to call on you. We'll be back shortly, and please enjoy your meal. It's now my special privilege to welcome and introduce Dr. Moniz, the 13th Secretary of Energy of the United States. To our great delight, this is the second summit Secretary Moniz has attended, a sign, we think, of the importance and relevance of this region and, of course, this gathering. Secretary Moniz embodies a unique synthesis of rich technical knowledge of the science that shapes global energy dynamics and the political savvy required to actually get things done. An accomplished scientist and policymaker, he joined President Obama's cabinet in May 2013, following a 97-0 vote in the Senate, a real tribute to the Secretary, and the kind of vote that does not happen very often in the US Congress these days, but precisely the bipartisan spirit the Atlantic Council stands for. Prior to his appointment as Energy Secretary, Dr. Moniz was a professor of physics and engineering systems at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where he was a faculty member since 1973. At MIT, he headed the Department of Physics and the Bates Linear Accelerator Center. Most recently, Dr. Moniz served as the founding director of the MIT Energy Initiative and of the MIT Laboratory for Energy and the Environment. He's been a leader of multidisciplinary technology and policy studies on the future of nuclear power, coal, nuclear fuel cycles, natural gas, and solar energy in a low-carbon world. We very much look forward to hearing from Secretary Moniz. Please join me in giving him a very, very warm welcome as he comes to the stage.
Well, thank you, John. Governor, ambassador, whatever. It's a pleasure to be here and elaborate on the remarks that I was able to make this morning when the conference opened. As I noted this morning in the reference to turbulent times, et cetera, there are many things we could discuss, but I'm just going to focus down on a couple. First, something that's, I think, on many of our minds is the discussion around energy security. This has been, to a large extent, of course, elevated in attention because of the situation in Ukraine and the dependence on particularly natural gas from Russia, not only in Ukraine, but of course, but in a number of other countries, including Turkey, with a substantial dependence as well on Russian natural gas. But that really has, I think, opened up a broader discussion, and one that I think we need to have. As I said this morning, and Fred repeated, is that I think it's very important that we look at energy security in a collective framework among allies and friends. There are many reasons for that. Certainly, if you just look within Europe, first of all, there's the issue of shared infrastructure across countries, which we'll come back and discuss a little bit, is important. But beyond that, even from the perspective of the United States, where by traditional measures, with our tremendously enhanced oil and natural gas production, one would say, what's our concern with energy security? Well, we have concerns, of course. For one thing, we are certainly coupled to the global oil market and the global oil prices. And we know that large excursions there have had dramatic impacts on the economy, the global economy over time. The United States is very much part of that market as still a major importer of oil, and now as a major exporter of oil products. So we are very, very much exposed, as is everybody else, to the global oil price. But beyond that, when we have allies, friends who have significant energy insecurities, then frankly, the influence on their freedom of action influences what we can do together in a whole variety of contexts. So again, I think we really need to have this view of again collective responsibility in terms of energy security. Now, the next question is, what are the elements in energy security? Earlier this year, again following the Ukraine transgressions, starting out with the G7 and President Obama played a strong role in motivating the energy ministers in the G7 together with the EU to come together to think about a path forward on energy security. And there were three elements there, and I'll come back to the components of an energy security strategy. But we had three assignments in the end. One was, of course, the near-term assignment of looking at this winter and what it would mean in Ukraine and in other parts of Europe in particular. And I'll come back and say a few words about. Actually, I'll just say it now. So, in that case, I would say the EU, of course, is making very strong efforts, but we as well. In fact, the Department of Energy in the United States put together a team from multiple agencies, very experienced in emergency response situations, supplemented by technical experts from our laboratories, supplemented by some Canadian experts who spent time in Ukraine. And what I want to emphasize is really provided the know-how to the Ukrainian government to generate their own emergency response contingency plan for the winter. And I think this is, again, we viewed this as something that, in this collective sense, that was very much something that we extended that ability to help in that way. Always in strong coordination with the EU, because again, if we don't work together on this, we'll just create, the word I used this morning, chaos. So that was one part. A second part was around what became known as the stress tests. And the EU has carried out stress tests. However, what we have emphasized is that the stress test that's carried out, which focused on natural gas, now really need to be broadened to encompass all the other elements of what is really an energy security strategy, which brings us to the third element of our charge, which is now, again, in coordination with the EU, to be developing a plan for the mid to long term in terms of real evolution towards a more energy secure future. The elements of that plan, clearly in addressing energy security, diversity of supply of fuels is critical, but it's much more. There's also diversity of supply routes, for example. Here in Turkey, that's very relevant. Discussions of the Southern Corridor, for example, bringing Caspian gas west, eventually development of the Eastern Mediterranean gas reserves. So certainly diversity of supply and diversity of supply routes is very important. But so is developing the alternatives to using gas and oil, for example, especially to the extent to which they are imported. So that includes renewables, it includes biofuels, et cetera. Certainly in the United States, we are up now to about 10%, just about precisely 10% of our liquid fuel supply for vehicles being biofuels. It's also about having transparent functioning markets with the infrastructure needed to support those markets. In Europe, again, that's an issue that is partway towards completion, and I think has gotten an additional stimulus from the events of this year. But I think we don't often enough focus on the importance of functioning markets as part of an energy security posture by being able to reallocate energy resources in times of need. I might add, in the United States, one often marvels, and I think quite appropriately, at the speed with which our shale gas resources have been expanded. However, I would point out it's not only a question of the resource; it was the question of having infrastructure, of having market structures, which allowed that to develop so rapidly. Another very important element in a overall energy security plan is energy efficiency, and we know that in fact in many countries, including Ukraine, where the energy intensity is approximately 3 times that of Europe, of the rest of Europe, is a tremendous opportunity to diminish the need for natural gas, for example. Obviously developing reserves, including oil reserves, something that needs revisiting probably after to reflect the very different global oil markets of today versus the 1970s is important. Fuel substitution capability is important. So there are a whole set of measures, and I think a very important task now for the next half year or so is, again, in coordination with the EU, to be working on a real vision of an integrated energy security picture, and one that will also integrate with the road to Paris, if you like, in terms of climate change, which is the second topic I'd like to spend a few minutes on. Obviously, the recent announcement, joint announcement by Presidents Obama and Xi, I think, first of all, caught the attention of a lot of people, and probably surprised a number of people as well. Now, the EU, of course, had already made statements about strong, ambitious goals for 2030 in the context of next year's climate meeting, and now with the United States putting forward ambitious targets as well, and China, if nothing else, I mean for sure, very importantly, acknowledging the responsibility and the need to address CO2, to talk about peaking CO2 around 2030, ideally earlier, and we believe that there is real potential for that to happen earlier, in addition to their 20% non-fossil energy goal. we think was a pretty strong statement. And now I think the task for many here and many others as well is going to be how to capture the momentum and the commitment by the world's largest emerging economy to bring along other emerging economies in what hopefully will be a successful Paris meeting in terms of differentiated but nevertheless ambitious plans to address the climate challenge. Addressing the climate challenge obviously takes us to clean energy as a central piece of that response, and I would say that the kind of transformation that we are talking about, not immediately but decades down the road, of a largely decarbonized energy economy, that is a major transformation, obviously. In my view, I have no doubt that transformation will come. Exactly what its pace will be, its scope and scale remains to be seen, but I believe it will come, and there are at least a couple of strong reasons. One is we are seeing the impacts of global warming already. They are very likely to get substantially worse. The issue of adaptation to climate change as a complement to, as an unfortunately necessary complement to mitigation is of course getting much more attention. Our President's Climate Action Plan in the summer of 2013 elevated adaptation because we just can't put our heads in the sand and ignore what is happening. As those impacts to which we must adapt get more and more into the public's attention, I believe that this transformation and the effort to address climate will in fact pick up dramatically. Clearly, if we can, in Paris, get a good head start on this, that will lessen the costs, lessen the adaptation challenge, and just be, clearly be the ideal approach. The IPCC has, of course, emphasized this as well, but also in the United States, earlier this year, we published the third climate assessment report, and in this report, we had more granularity in terms of the regional threats from climate change. And I think, again, these are the kinds of things that will drive, I think, public opinion, to drive policymakers to be ambitious in addressing global warming and climate change. Now, this transformation of the energy system is clearly not going to be easy. For one thing, we should remember what are some of the fundamental characteristics of the energy system. These are, in my view, these are not negotiable. These are just the reality of the energy system. First of all, it's a multi-trillion-dollar business, probably like $8 trillion globally on that scale. Secondly, it's a highly capitalized, a capital-intensive business. Investments that are decades long with lots of capital required. It's fundamentally a commodity business in the sense that one provides heat, light, mobility, et cetera, with different technologies, but fundamentally providing the same kinds of services to consumers. And those services are essential for everything we do, meaning that I don't believe we will ever escape the fact that energy will be a relatively highly regulated business with a lot of political interest, shall we say. And so I spell that out to say that, again, I firmly believe that this transformation will happen, but those characteristics of the energy system are not the ones that you would list a priori for a nimble system that will respond quickly to innovation. So those are realities that we must face. And there's another issue that can complicate, especially in the industrialized countries, the transformation, and that is that as we succeed in addressing climate risk mitigation, part and parcel of that will be substantial reductions on the demand side. And reductions on the demand side, again, make it even more challenging for new players to come in the face of incumbents. So those are realities, but it's what we must overcome in driving the reduction. And that finally leads to innovation, as I mentioned this morning, both in technology for cost reduction and in business models. On the cost reduction front, I think we are doing actually quite well. I'll just take one example of, you'd say, utility scale photovoltaics at the Department of Energy through our loan program. We kind of kick-started the utility scale photovoltaic business in the United States. It's now taken off, and the system costs are significantly below $2 a watt at this stage for a project. If you work through the arithmetic, that's beginning to look extremely interesting, and we could repeat that in other parts of clean energy technology. So cost reduction is critical, and I think we need to kind of, in some sense, look up and recognize that these technologies are really getting into marketplace competitive world, especially in appropriately chosen applications. So I think that this is coming along very well, and with a continued push on innovation, this can, I think, materially accelerate the transformation that we talked about, even in the face of those energy characteristics I listed. Now, the other part, however, is business model innovation, and to be honest, I think this lags technology innovation at this stage. That goes back to this issue of highly regulated environments, for example, for energy. But I think that the prize is enormous if we can get innovative business models that reflect the new technologies, sometimes the new architectures of delivering energy, of finding ways to couple genuinely new services to consumers along with their energy services. So this, I think, is a major challenge to move forward. And basically, those are the remarks I wanted to make. I think on energy security and climate, these are two of the big challenges for doing business in turbulent times. Thank you.